I came in just a little bit after Adam Murray did, and it was a mission to try and stay up for sure. And we got it all together for the last 10 games or so, and yeah, so it was a stressful time for everyone at the club, I'd say. But the sweetest moment would be those last few games we played, where I felt like everything was clicking, everyone was
Yeah.
fighting for each other, and we felt like we were going to win every game, even though we were down the bottom on the ladder. It didn't feel like it. I feel like we were one of the best teams in the league.
It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Finn Ballard McBride to the From the Club podcast. Great to see you, Finn.
Great to be here. Thanks, David.
Thank you, mate. Mate, we were just saying, offline that lots of people watching this interview is going to be Eastbourne Borough fans, and I'm sure a lot of Welling fans now, and Finn McBride, and Finn Ballard McBride fans from Welling will be watching as well. And when the news broke that you left the club last week, there was a real outpouring of affection towards you. So we didn't want you to just disappear without saying goodbye, having a chat, and obviously taking the time to wish you all the best as well. So thanks for coming on, Finn.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, like you said, it was great to see the outpour of emotions from the Eastbourne Borough fans. They've been supportive since day one of me. I've received many messages from many fans who was supporting me all the way through and wished me well in the future. So it was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we say about that support, I don't think that support's ended, Finn, because like ourselves, we all had our foot mob up on Saturday whilst watching the game at Borough. And when first of all we checked that you was in, all four of you were in the starting lineup, and then obviously Jaden scored, and then when you scored as well, it was the icing on the cake for us. So I'm sure that support will continue throughout the rest of your career. And of course, it's been a bit of a whirlwind couple of days for you, and we're going to catch up on everything that's happened a little bit later on. But before we do, let's just go back to the very beginning, because you've got this very exotic backstory in how you arrived at Eastbourne Borough. You were born in Australia, and then obviously you got this exciting move to the US. So let's go back to the beginning. What was life like growing up in Australia?
Yeah, so I don't know, Australia, everyone's very intrigued about Australia. They always ask. When I was in America and here, everyone asks about, the animals and what's life like.
Yeah.
But
That's my next question.
I was a I was a city boy, grew up in Sydney, so the biggest city in Australia. And yeah, it was just, it's a fun life. I enjoy it there. It's beautiful weather, much nicer than here, to be honest. Got the nice, sandy beaches and nice hot summers, and it's not as cold, doesn't snow. So, it was nice. I enjoyed it, and I spent the first 18 years of my life in Sydney, and then from there I've been, traveling around the world playing football, you could say.
Yeah, yeah. And because you was in the city, you mentioned Sydney. You mentioned obviously everyone asked you about the animals out there. Did that mean that you avoided the spiders and the snakes and Finn?
Yeah, you learn early on that you want to avoid the spiders and the snakes. So you know which ones to avoid. It's the colorful ones. You stay away from the colorful ones. Yeah. So in the city, it's not too bad. But once you start heading into the bush, then you encounter a bit more snakes and spiders. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard as well, because you obviously get those really big spiders. I've seen those, but they're not as dangerous as the little ones. Is that right?
No, usually it's the little ones you got to be careful of. Little
Yeah.
little like colorful ones, like the redback spiders and the funnel webs. Yeah, they're the ones that pack the punch. They've got the venom. The big ones usually all right. They're just for
Yeah.
show. We don't have to worry
Yeah.
about them.
Well, all we've got to worry about here is wasps and bees, so we're pretty safe over here, aren't we,
That's
Finn?
it. I think it's the safest place in the world, really, animal wise. You got nothing here that's going to hurt you.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned for the first 18 years growing up you were in Australia. What age did you sort of pick up a football, and when did you start kicking a football around, and when did you actually then realise that you were really good at it?
Obviously, I grew up. My parents would always go to the park and throw balls and kick balls around and stuff. But I think the first like official kind of team with other people, I think I was 3 or 4 years old. and that was football. That was the first thing I played. So yeah, that was where it started, and then from there, just carried through till now. Just loved every second of it, and yeah, that was it from that moment.
Do you remember how you heard that Sydney FC were interested in how you got onto their radar?
Yeah, so in Australia, you have the NPL. It's called the National Premier League, which is it's got a few leagues. It's the NPL 1, 2, and 3. So that's from top to bottom. And that's kind of what you play in. When you're 12 years old and upwards, that's when it starts getting a little bit more professional. So I jumped around a few teams in Sydney there. And then at the age of 15, I got scouted per se for the Sydney FC Academy. Um, Australia was going through like a transition period because before that there were no. So A League is the top league in Australia, but there were no academies for any of the A League teams. There was just the first team, and that was it. Then there'd you steal players from these NPL leagues. So when I was 15, they started this A League academy where all the A League teams started an academy. I was the first one in there, and I was 15 and was lucky enough to skip the under 18 age group and join straight up with the under 23s. So I was the youngest guy there, and yeah, I was 15, throwing myself around with guys up to 23 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
so I got thrown into it, and it was a great experience, and that was you know proper training every day of the week. That's when things got real serious. Yeah.
Yeah. So who would have been your heroes at the time? What sort of footballers and teams were you watching as a fan yourself?
So footballing wise, from Australia, it was Tim Cahill. He was the man.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then when I was younger, growing up, it was more Harry Kewell, Mark Viduka, which are all guys who killed it over here in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, then the next thing that happens is this incredible move to the US. Have the opportunity to then move 7,000 miles across the world to go and play in the University of California. How did that all happen?
Yeah, so it's a long story. To be honest, there was a little bit in between there. So I left Australia when I was 18. I had so I'm lucky enough to have an English grandfather, which gives me visa access to the UK. Otherwise, none of this would be possible, first of all. So
Yeah.
I'm very lucky for that. So I'm on a UK ancestry visa here. And when I was 18, someone in Australia with connections over in the UK said, I can come over and he can help set up some trials and stuff. And I jumped at the opportunity, jumped on a plane, and joined, what was it, the end of 2018, it would have been. And I came in August, right when the season kind of started. And I was there waiting to do some trials, and I got a bit stuck. This guy was supposed to help me. It was bad timing. All the teams were full. They just started the season, so it wasn't really much happening. This unknown person from Australia. So I was hanging out in the UK for a little bit, and my high school coach from Sydney in Australia, from Newington College, he was following along. He's an Irish guy, and he put me in contact with an Irish friend of his working at Southend United. So I actually jumped over to Southend United, was with their 23s for 3 months or so, training with them, which was a great experience. And from there, I met someone at Southend who used to work at the club, who now was working in Austria for a club called FC Kitzbühel. And he was looking for some players to take on loan from Southend. And they said, look, we've got this Australian guy here training with us. We don't really have the budget to, look after him full time. Would you be interested in him? And they said, yeah, come over. So then from there, I jumped on a plane when I was 18 from England to Austria and did 6 months in the Austrian Alps in some ski village called Kitzbühel, which is, I don't know, it's a pretty famous village. They just had the Hahnenkamm, which is the World Ski Championships there on the weekend. And yeah, I was there for 6 months. And the day I arrived in Vienna, when I flew from England, I got a call from a man called Dylan Murphy, who works for a company called Wagner and Wolf, who reached out I don't know, a few months before saying, would you be interested in coming to the US to do this college thing? And I kind of was like, I'm not sure about it. I'm going to the UK to, trial with some teams over there. So I don't really think it's for me. And then he reached out again a few months later, just checking in right on the day I touched down in Austria when things were a little bit up in the air. And he gave the proposition of, look, it's going to cost you nothing. We'll send out a highlight package and a CV to a bunch of colleges in the US, and we'll see what interest you get back and what schools. Then, if you talk to them, see what you like, see what scholarships are offering, then we can do a deal, and you can go over there. So I did the 6 months in Austria, and a couple of months in, I got these interests from all these different schools in the US, and UCSB, the University of California, Santa Barbara, was one of them that stood out, and they offered me a full scholarship ride for 4 years to study and play there. Live in California on the beach in Santa Barbara. It's a 65,000 US dollars per year is what tuition costs in general. So that's all paid for. I'm paying nothing. And I get to play in a 17,000 seater stadium with all these amazing facilities, which are on par with Premier League teams, essentially. So I took it, and then I jumped over to the US, and I spent the last 4 years there. Most of the time in Santa Barbara, and got to travel around, and it was great. I loved it.
Oh, Finn, that's an incredible story, isn't it? So, I mean, it blows my mind because obviously, as an 18-year-old going over to Austria, I mean, as you know, my eldest son is a similar age, and
Yeah.
even listening to you say that, I'm worried for you, even though that was 6 years ago for you now. 18. What's your kind of mindset like going into a foreign country? Another different language, a different culture. Have you always been brave in that way, and you kind of, or was you homesick? How was you kind of mentally approaching that situation?
Yeah, it was. So I was 18, and it was the first time I'd probably been away from home. And I wasn't just away from home, I was literally as far away from home as
Yeah,
possible on the other side of the world. Um, so it was tough. Yeah, I definitely did get homesick, especially the first few months. When I was in England as well, I definitely got homesick there because, like I said, I was looking to do these trials and nothing. I couldn't even get in anywhere before I got to Southend. So it was a little bit, it was tough. And then when I was at Southend, I wasn't signed there. I was just training there. And as a trialist, you're not going to get the same level of uh, interaction with the players, essentially, because I understand it. Because why would you make a deep connection with the trialists? Because they're probably going to be gone, in a few days or a week or whatever.
yeah,
So it was a little bit lonely and stuff, but it was in pursuit of what I'm trying to achieve, which is through football. I'm trying to get to the highest level I can. So that always drove me and kept me focused, and you know centered myself. So yeah, then the opportunity to come to Austria came up, and I love traveling. I want to see the world, and I took it. And it was a great level there in Austria. I was playing this team, Kitzbühel. We had a team of the strikers now playing in China, Chinese Super League. Before that, he was in the Croatian Super League. I was playing in the centre mid, and my other centre mid partner was called Andreas Herzl, and he played in the World Cup in 2010, I believe, against like Xavi and Iniesta and stuff. He was starting for Austria.
yeah,
And there's a few Bundesliga players in there that were playing Austrian Bundesliga. There was another guy playing Bundesliga 2 in Germany. So it was a great team, and a great
yeah,
experience. And like you said, it's another language as well. So that was a whole nother
yeah,
whole nother thing to work around, because our manager didn't really speak English. It was very basic English he spoke, and I spoke no German. So the assistant manager was a Greek guy who was multilingual. So he was translating team talks, English to me, and then Greek to my housemate who I was living with.
yeah.
Um, so it was a great experience.
Oh, fair play to you, Finn, mate. That's amazing. You mentioned earlier on that they put a highlights package together for you. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but I remember when we signed you at Eastbourne Borough, a lot of the fans rushed to YouTube to find out what we could find out about you. And there was this unbelievable highlights reel of you on YouTube, um, scoring all types of goals, showing all sorts of trickery and absolutely unbelievable. Um, you, I think when you first landed at Eastbourne Borough, it was actually positioned that you as a centre forward. You know, you was coming in as a striker.
Yeah.
What is your actual favourite position? You mentioned you played midfield in Austria. Where do you see your best position, and you know how's that sort of worked out for you throughout your career?
So I'm not sure, to be honest, is the answer of what my best position is. Somewhere in attack where I can get around the goal and score goals. I feel like I'm a good finisher and I'm composed and can score the goal more often than not at a higher percentage than most players. I feel like that's one of my strengths. So I feel like being forward where I can get around the goal is any position where I can do that is good. And then the other thing is, I think my other strength is, having a good engine, being able to run a lot. I grew up in Australia doing running and football. That was kind of my other sport. I ended up getting to fourth fastest in Australia for my age group for 1500 meter. So that's kind of my upbringing. So, running around, working hard, scoring goals, that's me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I go to different teams and different coaches see me in different places. And so, I don't mind. I think it's versatile what the team needs, but kind of in the number 10 position or as a striker is kind of, I'd say where I'm most comfortable. Yeah.
But it's really interesting because I assumed that you'd watch a lot of Tim Cahill, and as soon as you said that Tim Cahill, because you're very capable in that position, aren't you? With that role that Tim Cahill played, he could score lots of goals. He had an extremely um, clever football brain in terms of being able to pick out a pass and set up passes as well. And you've got a lot of that in your game as well, haven't you, Finn?
Yeah, I appreciate that. But yeah, I think Tim Cahill, when he was at Everton, he started out as a centre mid and then he slowly transitioned further up the field and then
Yeah,
turned into a kind of an out and out striker. So I see myself kind of the same way. Kind of down
yeah.
the spine, down the middle is where I'm most effective, but can do a job in all those positions. Yeah.
Yeah. So when Tim Cahill first came to the UK, he started off at Millwall Football Club
Yeah.
as a youngster, and I was a season ticket holder there at the time. So I got to see him, and he was very much playing in that deeper role, back in midfielder role. And yeah, so yeah, really interesting comparison there, Finn. So the bit that a lot of Borough fans are gonna, want to hear about is obviously you've just had these. You said 4 years out in the US, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously you then get on Eastbourne Borough's radar, and we then do this incredible piece of business to bring you to the club in January, almost a year ago to the day last year. How did that all come about?
Yeah. So if I go back a little bit, I was in the US and it wasn't necessarily my idea to come back to the UK. My goal was because I was in the US, I wanted to try and push on to the MLS. That was
Yeah,
kind of the goal. And in there you can go through the MLS draft. So that was kind of my goal. So I did. I had a very successful college career there. I scored lots of goals and was the top goal scorers in the country. And just quickly, it's a very good level, the US college. There's lots of very, very good players there, lots of gems. So I don't know, coaches or managers looking at anyone from the college, they should definitely have a look and look deeper into it because there are some very, very, very good players there. Like just quickly, for example, my UCSB team, I think we had two Americans in the starting lineup, and the other nine, were internationals. We had a couple of Sierra Leones, a couple of guys from France that came from League One academies, some guys from Germany from Bundesliga academies. There were two Aussies on the team, a couple of Kiwis, the Swedish. It's a whole mixing pot of top players who have been playing at top academies around the world, and that's not just UCSB. That's all the colleges in the US. So it is a great level there, and there are great players. But yeah, so I scored a bunch of goals. I did well in the US, and I wanted to get drafted. And I did really well my last season, which is kind of the important one of when you want to get drafted. But the MLS and the US in general has very strict international player rules, like visa rules for international players. So I believe you're allowed 7 international players per roster. That's for the MLS and the second division. So it makes it tough as an Australian because if you could have Messi, Suarez, Busquets, and Jordi Alba, or some random Australian guy I don't really know who's come through a college, I'd pick Messi honestly over me. But yeah, so it makes it a little more difficult because lots of the roster spots are filled with those marquee players for the MLS. So it is very hard for international to kind of break into that MLS. So because of that, I did a little bit with a couple of MLS teams, with Minnesota United and Portland Timbers. But ultimately, like I said, I've got the UK passport or visa, not a passport. But yeah, I decided that I want to go back because I didn't really get to play when I came the first time. I ended up coming and then going over to Austria. I didn't really get into the system. So I came over to the UK and, wanted to do it because it's always been like, when I'm from Australia looking into the UK, UK is like the one league we look at, the Premier League and all the divisions throughout. Um, it's I see it as it's very, it can be true. Like you don't fall through the net as much in the UK. There's so many teams and there's so many leagues that if you do well, you move up, and if you don't do as well, you move down, and it's very linear. And I think if you, especially as a forward, if you score goals, then there's a very clear path to rise and get up the leagues. So it's very appealing to me because I feel like your hard work gets rewarded a lot in the UK. Whereas in Australia, I'd say there's the A League, then the NPL. You can kind of get lost a little bit, and it's a little bit, you know. Whereas here, I feel like there's so many people, everyone knows everyone, and there's scouts everywhere and coaches, everyone talks. It's a very close bubble, and if you can do well, I feel like you move up. Just like Braden Johnson from
Yeah,
Eastbourne, he did
yeah,
well, and there he is, straight up in the championship. And then Fletcher
yeah,
Holman, before I
yeah.
came, but I've met and talked to Fletch, and he's at Wolves. So if you do well,
There's a
that's
pathway.
it.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
clear pathway. So I
yeah,
wanted to come back to the UK. Um, how I came here, it was a little bit like how I came when I was 18. I came over with no trials or anything. I came and stayed at a friend's place who is playing up in Scotland. He's playing for Cove Rangers in the League One up there. Will Gillingham is his name. So I came, messaged him, said, "Hey, can I just stay for a couple of nights with you till I get some trials organized?" And I went on Google and I messaged every single agent, and I went on Instagram and messaged every single agent I could find in the UK, and see what I got back. And I sent them my highlight reel, which is the one you would have saw of me at college, and just said, can you get me in somewhere? And a few got back to me, some didn't get back to me at all. And one of them, which I'm signed with now, Achieve Football, James Garley, he messaged me back and he said, "I've got a trial for you at Gateshead. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Yep, I'm there. Let me know. Let me know the date." So I got down there the next day to Gateshead, did a trial with them for a week, did really well. Um, they offered me a contract for very little money, which is fine because I'm there for I'm not here for the money right now. I'm here to try and move up. Um, but the one thing I do need is an Australian. If I'm going to get little money, I do need somewhere to live as well.
yeah, yeah.
So they said, "Look, we might have somewhere for you to stay, um, but it's a little bit of I don't know, maybe it won't work, blah, blah, blah." So they offered the contract. I went back up to my mate's place in Scotland, in Aberdeen, to go get all my stuff. And then it kind of fell through because they didn't have anywhere for me to live. And they didn't really have much of a budget, which I didn't really believe at the time. But seeing the problems they had last year with the whole stadium thing when they're in the playoffs,
Yeah.
the lease and that, I think they were telling the truth now. They were struggling a little bit. So, yeah, once Eastbourne heard that Gates had offered me a contract and wanted me, they jumped in, and yeah, then that was it. Eastbourne gave me a contract, and I said, "All right, let's do it." That's kind of how I got to Eastbourne.
So Gateshead at this point, they was National League, right? So this was a division above. That's right,
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
brilliant. And then, like we mentioned, you arrived this time last year, and I don't know how much research you'd done at the time, but the club was, really struggling with injuries. We had this huge injury crisis. It was quite a thin squad as well, wasn't it? And we were deep within a relegation battle, and it was really difficult to see how we were going to pick up enough points to avoid relegation at one point. But we did, and you, as everyone would say and give testimony to, you played such a significant role in Eastbourne Borough staying up last season. When you look back at that achievement, Finn, what are some of the standout memories for you personally?
Yeah, it was a great achievement. And it was a tough season. It was tough before I got there, and I came in just a little bit after Adam Murray did. And it was a mission to try and stay up for sure. And we got it all together for the last 10 games or so. And yeah, so it was a stressful time for everyone at the club, I'd say. But the sweetest moment would be those last few games we played where I felt like everything was clicking, everyone was
Yeah,
fighting for each other, and we felt like we were going to win every game, even though we were down the bottom on the ladder. It didn't feel like it. I feel like we were one of the best teams in the league. So yeah, and all that culminated to the last couple of games. So that my first big start I got against Dartford would definitely be one of the away at Dartford. That was a big
yeah,
game because
amazing.
they were right down there with us in the ladder. That was an important game. I really enjoyed that one. And then also the last game of the season, obviously at Braintree, who ends up getting promoted, which we beat on the last game of the season. Yeah. So those two
Yeah,
games stand out to me.
yeah, incredible. And of course, during that, I mean, the celebrations, we took two coaches to Braintree. There was so much away support for that game, and uh, was it Truro that had to play like four games in the space of like 8 or 9, or Taunton? It was, they'd already lost, so we knew that we were gonna stay up,
Yeah.
regardless of the Braintree result. But you guys still put on a huge performance, and we got the victory. And I remember the photograph at the end where all of you guys were in front of the fans, and it's an amazing memory, isn't it? And there must have been a part of you think, because obviously you knew that you were out of contract, you'd achieved this, for what you were brought in to do. You helped keep the club up and with all of the other players, and there must have been a part of you where you're on a pitch, not actually knowing where you're going to be next season. So you're thinking, I'm sure in your mind, that this might be the last time that you're with all your mates and with the fans in that moment. As a footballer, sort of mentally, how do you kind of deal with that insecurity, not knowing sort of what's going to be happening with yourself, sort of like from one season to the next?
Yeah. Well, for me, I think you just got to control. You can only control what you can control, really. So I think that's the way you have to think about it. If you think too much into it, then you're distracted and you're not worrying about the football. I think if you just focus on playing as well as you can in the football, doing your job, helping the team win games, then hopefully everything else sorts itself out.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah,
the approach and mindset I took, because there's not going to, if you're not performing and not playing, then there isn't going to be a contract at the end, and then so there's no point thinking about it. You just have to do your job, and yeah, take it from there.
yeah. The celebrations on the pitch after the game were incredible, and like I say, they'll stay with Borough fans for a lifetime. How did you players? Because I mean, it must have been on an even bigger level. How did you guys sort of celebrate the fact that we stayed up? What do you remember about the celebrations?
So on the Tuesday, I believe. So we had the game against Braintree on the Saturday. So the Tuesday before it, we were all. I was living in the players' house at the time with a few of the other guys in the team. So we were all watching the result of, I forget what team, but it was one of the teams down the bottom that
Yeah, yeah,
if they won, then we had to win or draw against Braintree. But if they lost, then we were safe, and the
yeah,
game it didn't matter what the result was. So we were all watching that game closely, and as soon as we realized we were safe after that game, our group chat was going crazy. Everyone was messaging, and then everyone said, "Okay, everyone to the club. Everyone get to Eastbourne to Priory Lane." So most of the guy, everyone on the team jumped in the car, came down, and we all had a celebration in the bar at Eastbourne on the Tuesday
yeah,
night to
yeah,
celebrate. Which yeah, it was great. It was a great
yeah.
experience.
But it was absolutely well deserved, and yeah, it would have been amazing to be a fly on a wall for that. Um, Finn, you've already mentioned obviously, you had so much experience playing in different leagues around the world. What sort of struck you as you come into the National League South? What was that league like? Was it more physical than you were used to? Was there anything that surprised you about the division in any way?
Yeah, the physicality and in partner with that, the way the game's refereed. So I'd
Yes.
say that
Yeah.
it's yeah, it was something that I definitely had to get used to, and I'm still getting used to. I'd say is what's a foul, what's not a foul. Because when I came, I remember the first game, people are grabbing each other and throwing each other to the ground, and it's just kind of like play on, really. Like
Yeah.
it has to be a proper foul for it to be a foul. Is what I kind of felt. So before I'd say in America and Australia, the game would be refereed a little bit more strict, I'd say. Whereas
Yeah.
here, it's a lot more free flowing, where you can. There's a certain level of the dark arts, you could say, or uh, tactical fouling, which is allowed or encouraged pretty much. So it's just finding that fine line of how much you can
Yeah.
do, how much you can hold on to the other person's shirt, how hard you can nudge them or shove them. So yeah, that was the one big thing that stuck out to me, for
Yeah,
sure.
and yet you say that, and you're absolutely right. But yet there's this level of inconsistency because then there are fouls and yellow cards dished out for non-fouls, like for things that you just scratch your head about, thinking that wasn't even a foul, and yet you're giving out a yellow card for something that's completely ridiculous. And
Yeah, yeah,
Finn, I won't get you to comment on that because obviously you're still playing. I don't want you to get into trouble. But yeah, we equally in the stands are often left scratching our head multiple times per game. But Finn, I think there was a real feeling, after the role that you played last year, the fans were all thinking that, you could definitely go on and play at a higher level. So we were absolutely over the moon when we found out that you had signed on for another season. I think it was one of the last players to do so after we were getting the weekly announcements about who was coming back. How easy was it to get that deal done? And were there any other clubs looking at you at that point after what you'd achieved last season?
yeah. There were a few clubs looking, but like I said, I enjoyed my time so much at Eastbourne. We had such a great end to the season there, where we felt like we we were a bit. I don't know. I wouldn't say unbeatable, but yeah, we kind of had that feeling where we can beat anyone. And the core group of the guys were coming back. Like I said, I was one of the last few to sign, so I could see everyone that was coming back.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I really enjoyed my time. So I thought, I joined in January, so I've only been with the team for 4 months. And it's with a familiar group. I thought it'd be a good idea to come back, and I enjoyed it. So why not? Um,
yeah,
so yeah,
yeah,
that made the decision easy to come back to Eastbourne.
yeah. Well, unlike last season when we had so many injuries and a very thin squad, this season we've got a really deep squad, and that's meant that you've been limited in how much you've been able to play. What's that been like as a player, especially one that played such a key role last year for you? And how have you dealt with that mentally?
Yeah, so it's been tough, honestly. Frustrating, really frustrating. Like you said, we have a deep squad of very good players on the team. We do have a very, very good squad, and we have lots of cover in each position. So it's a big competition for places on the team, and yeah, like you said, it's a big squad. So there are lots of unhappy or frustrated players, I'd say, on the team. Um, and it's a good problem to have for the management of Eastbourne and the club, because you want a strong team and the strongest players on the field. Um, so yeah, it's been tough and frustrating because obviously I speak for myself, but I'm sure I speak for all the other players. I feel like I should be playing, and they feel like they should be playing as well. Feel like you can do a job in the field and do better what's there, but ultimately it's up to uh, Adam at Eastbourne of who plays, and he preferred other players over me, which I understand. So I yeah, I feel like I should be playing, but then also I think, okay, well, maybe I didn't do enough to impress him. I feel like if I would have done enough to, um, I should have made it where there was no question whether I should be playing or not. Almost. So
Mm.
if he has a question mark whether I should play or not, then maybe I haven't done enough. So, I worked my ass off at Eastbourne. I wasn't playing that much, but I was working hard every session. After I'd stay for an hour when everyone's gone, kicking balls, shooting and stuff. So I did my best to try and, stay as fit and fresh as possible, get back on the field. But, ultimately Adam decided that other players were doing the job for him or he preferred them. So, it was frustrating, but it is what it is.
Yeah. I remember when I interviewed Adam in the summer, he, as you know, was a brilliant player, a brilliant midfielder and played in the Premier League. And I remember him saying about how hungry he was to play, and he would be knocking on the manager's door when he wasn't picked. Is there a side of you that's able to do that thing? Were you knocking on the door asking to play? Is that your character?
Yeah, I did honestly, because I'm here from Australia to play football. I'm not here in Eastbourne for Eastbourne, to be honest. I'm not here for the weather or anything else. Like I'm here to play football. So it's painful to sit on the side and watch from the stands instead of being on the
Yeah.
field. So yeah, I had conversations with Adam, and I knocked on his door, and yeah, he just kind of the response I got was he just kind of preferred the other players over me, and just do what you can, keep on training hard, and that's what I did. But yeah, it was frustrating, definitely.
Yeah. Well, when you have been given opportunities, you've given us some great memories this season. I think particularly of that goal against Borough. What do you remember about that, Finn?
Yeah, it was great. Like I said, I was out of the team for quite a while before that. Like I said, I was knocking on Adam's door saying, "Put me out there," and I wasn't getting much back. And he finally did. I think we had a couple of injuries and suspensions. So I finally got in, and I tried to make the most of it. And yeah, got got a really nice goal I'm proud of, to win the game against Borough, who's a top team in the league.
They are, yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's a great memory for us, and it could be a very valuable couple of points for us that you earned us from that goal come the end of the season as well, Finn. Um, and one thing I've got to say, like we mentioned at the beginning, when it was announced last week that you'd left the club, there was a pretty unique outpouring of affection for you, and you've developed a real bond in a very short space of time with the Borough fans, and during the year that you've spent here at Eastbourne. What do you put that down to?
Well, I think it's just a great bunch of fans, honestly, who really warmed to me and I warmed to them. And they from day one when I arrived, they've been super friendly to me, always, having chats just, before the games, after the games. I see them around at the club, at training, or anywhere, even just walking around Eastbourne. I live here. I see a few fans around. They always, give a smile and say hello, which is a pleasant surprise because I think uh, the opinion of English coming into England, not knowing much, the opinion of English fans is usually they're quite brutal with their own
Yeah,
players, very harsh.
yeah,
So I was very pleasantly surprised to have a very very positive fans who backed me the whole time and were very supportive. So I'm really appreciative of that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You mentioned about living in Eastbourne. Logistically, how's that going to work out for you now, Finn? Will we still see you walking around Eastbourne? Are you staying in Eastbourne for now, or are you going to be moving to Kent whilst you're at Welling?
Yeah, so I'm still in Eastbourne. So if anyone sees me around, say hello. I'll be around.
Yeah, good.
Um, yeah, it's much easier. I'm here with my girlfriend. Um,
Yeah,
Doing that the whole housing lease thing in the UK is a bit of a pain. So I'm signed with Welling till the end of the season, and then I'm not sure what will happen after then. So it doesn't make too much sense to relocate around there for now. So I'm just
yeah,
commuting up and back.
yeah. Well, we'll look out for you and make sure we give you a high five if we see you walking around, Finn. I,
Yeah,
I just want to go back to your skill set for a second, Finn, because I know a lot of the fans have been speaking about this, and it's a really unique attribute that you've got at this level. And I've heard a lot of people say this about your footballing IQ. You've got this wonderful ability to know what's going on across the whole pitch, almost like a radar type brain, knowing where people are, and you're able to pick out, some really impressive passes. I remember last season, particularly with Yaya's pace, how you was able to find Yaya when he would be making a run. It was a great thing to watch. Is that a natural ability that you've got, or is that something that you've been working on, in your game throughout the years?
uh, a bit of both, I'd say. I feel like I've always had a little, I don't know what you call it, like a knack for seeing the field a little bit, and trying to pick out passes which others might not see. Um, but it just comes from experience, really, just playing games. And like I said, I've been around the world playing football, so I've played with
Yeah,
lots of players and lots of different styles of football as well. I think I've played every formation possible at all these different teams, and I
yeah,
played with players from countries from all around the world. So I've seen a little bit of everything. So I think it helps. Um, it's like a little mixing pot of a little bit of everything that helps seeing different situations. And I think I've seen a lot now where I know, okay, this is what's going on. I can do this or do that. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of experience and how I've how my footballing career has gone so far. I've seen a lot of different cultures and ways to play, so that definitely helps.
yeah, for sure. At the beginning of our interview, we spoke about the whirlwind couple of days towards the end of last week when the news broke that you'd left Borough, and then days later you were snapped up by Welling United. How did that move come about for you, Finn?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been knocking on Adam's door to play, and I was didn't get much back. And it kind of got to the point where he said, "Look, I don't see you in my plans. You should probably look to go play your football elsewhere." Is kind of what it came to. So I had to put my name out there with my agent, and the club also circulated my name around a little bit. And then Welling came back to me as well as the other three Eastbourne boys, and were interested in having us for the season. And yeah, I took the opportunity. It's the Welling manager presented it as an opportunity to play football, and that's what I'm here to do. And yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an absolutely unbelievable piece of business for Welling. I mean, getting you and Quickie, who got was it fans player of the year last season?
Yeah, yeah.
Another unbelievable defender, Jaden, who's a bag of tricks out on the win. And we didn't get to see James too much, but I know James is well thought of as well. I know, I mean, this might be a silly question because you've done it so many times before having to go to new places and settle in, but is it kind of helpful moving to a new club with a couple of your mates, with existing relationships already in place, Finn?
100%. Yeah, it definitely does help. I think it's been helpful for all four of us that we've got not just one person to go to if you need, like, if you're not sure what's going on, or it's a familiar face where you can you feel a little bit more at home, at least initially when you get to somewhere new. So it is nice to have those guys around. And not only that, I think they're all really good players as well that deserve to be playing regular football. So yeah, I agree. Welling's done a great bit of business.
Yeah, yeah. We mentioned almost to the day 1 year later from when you were parachuted into Borough. You've now got a similar job to do at Welling, helping them avoid relegation. Things couldn't have got off to a better start on Saturday. Tell us about your debut, Finn.
Yeah, so the like you said, Welling's somewhat struggling a little bit now towards the bottom half of the ladder, near that kind of relegation sort of zone. They got a little bit of a buffer, but they're still kind of in that area. So they've had a lot of injuries throughout the season, and they decided to pull the trigger and bring the four of us in. So they wanted a bit of change, and they took the chance of putting all four of us on to start the game. And we're all hungry to play, and it worked out great for them. They rolled the dice, and it worked out well. We won the game 4-1 at Western Supermare, which is a hard place to go, I'd say. Um, I don't think anyone's got that kind of result at their place this season.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was the first game, but it was it was good, and it was I personally was really happy to get a goal to get that in the first game. I think that is definitely a real positive. And I can speak on behalf of the other Eastbourne boys that went there. They also did very well. So it's a good it's good, and I think Welling's kind of, they're talking about a turning point there of, like, a fresh start almost from that game on Saturday. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can take that confidence, and ride it through to the end of the season.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think you guys went 1-0 down, didn't you, before getting the 4 goals? And
Two
um,
minutes
I
into the
mean,
game, we went down. Yeah, so it
yeah,
was.
exactly. Yeah, and then Jaden got the first goal before you. Is that right? Did Jaden score first?
No,
No, you did.
the centre back, the captain got the first one. I got the
Yep,
second one,
you did.
and Jaden got the third one.
That's right. And just like we was mentioning Tim Cahill earlier on, there you are, back stick with your head aside of your game. We didn't really see too much at Borough, but you rise and score this brilliant header. And Jaden scores with a header as well, doesn't he? Which was
Yeah, yeah,
and made the fourth goal. I mean, for Welling fans, I don't know if you've looked on social media, Finn, but they're absolutely buzzing with you guys. You know, I heard one of the fans say that they were actually singing a song about Eastbourne Borough, about how much they love. Did you hear that on Saturday?
I didn't hear it, but I might have saw in the comment as well. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's funny. Yeah,
Yeah. And this could actually be an incredible piece of business by Eastbourne Borough because, at the moment, Welling aren't a threat this season because of your league position. And with the four of you now playing for Welling, there's a real sense that you could start picking up some points from some of the teams at the top of the table. So, it's almost agent Finn Ballard McBride, with a half an Eastbourne Borough shirt still on, taking points away from these rivals at the top of the table for Borough, right?
yeah, definitely. I think it's a win-win for both clubs. Welling's got some great players who can help them take some points and climb up that ladder and see what they can do. Um, and Eastbourne gets Welling to try and knock off some of those teams around them
Yeah.
as well and take points off them. So yeah, I think it is definitely a win-win for both clubs.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier on about your conversation with Rod. I don't know Rod Stringer, but I've seen a lot of his interviews on social media before. He seems like a real character and he's done a really good job at Welling under difficult circumstances. What's been your first impressions of Rod so far, Finn?
Um, he's definitely a character. He's a real interesting guy. I'd say he speaks his mind, which is good. He doesn't have too much of a filter, so you know what you get with him. So yeah, it's good so far. It's been good. I'm sure you'll get some brutal comments in the future, but at least you know where you stand with him, and everyone's on the same page. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, we'll continue to stay on the good side of him, Finn, because he does look a little bit scary. Finn, I like so many Borough fans can sincerely say that we're wishing you all the best and everything that you do going forward, not only at Welling this season, but throughout the rest of your career. I know for a fact that we're all going to be following you wherever you go throughout the next, few years, Finn. A massive thank you for everything you've done at the club. You've been a real, real hero for us, and you're going to be remembered very fondly for a long time at Borough. So thank you very much.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. And like I said, I thank Borough for everything they did for me. They brought me in. They were the first club I played for in the UK. And I really enjoyed my time there. And I wish Borough nothing but the best for the future. And hopefully they can go on and get promoted, which they're striving to do this season.
Ah, for sure, yeah. Well, Finn, we're now going to take a really quick break before coming back to asking you the signature from the club questions. So, Finn, as you know, as a business, we're all about official signed memorabilia, and you've been very kind to us over the years by signing lots of the cards for us as well, which I know a lot of the fans have got up on their walls. So, these last few questions are all memorabilia related. Are you ready?
Yes.
So, Finn, have you ever asked anyone for their autograph in person before? And if so, who?
So I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't. I haven't. I have never asked anyone for an autograph before. Yeah, that's just
None.
the truth. Honestly, I haven't. But
Not yet.
I'm not opposed to the idea in the future. Yeah.
On a similar topic, what memorabilia do you own? And if so, what's your favourite piece?
So I've got little footballing bits and pieces at home. I think my favorite bit of memorabilia was I've got a Jabulani ball, an official one, 2006 Jabulani ball from the sorry, not 2006, 2010 from the South Africa World Cup. Um, that's my favorite little bit of gear. I got it still in like the case, and it's sitting in my room back in Sydney. Yeah.
Ah, awesome. And have you been somebody that sort of like kept your match worn shirts throughout your career? Have you got like a Borough shirt? Have you been able to keep hold of one of those? And have you swapped shirts with any players throughout your career?
So I got a big drawer back home that's got yeah a shirt from every club I've played for. I don't have a Borough one unfortunately because they we signed them off to the sponsors, but I might have to try and speak to Simon or get a Borough shirt. I definitely need to keep one of
Yeah,
them.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And Finn, if you could have anyone's autograph or match worn shirt, dead or alive, who would you have and why?
So uh, I am very jealous of a fellow teammate of mine from Sydney FC who he was in the Socceroos squad the last World Cup, and he got to swap his jersey with Messi. He got in there and stole it. Wouldn't steal it. He got in there and he was the one confident enough to go up and ask him for it before anyone else. So he got an Australia versus Argentina match worn Lionel Messi shirt from the World Cup, which Messi won. So that must
Oh,
be worth a bit
mate.
of money, and
Yeah, for sure.
that's a great piece to have. So that's what I'd like. A Messi shirt would be me.
I'm not sure it gets any better than that, Finn, to be fair, mate.
Yeah, no,
Incredible. Finn, like I said earlier on, mate, thank you so much for your time and for being able to sort of talk over all of the memories from the last 12 months. We genuinely wish you all the best, and we hope that I certainly hope that I'll be bumping into you in Eastbourne at some point, so I can give you a big hug and say thanks for the last 12 months. Before we let you go, I know you're on Instagram. Where's the best place for people to follow you on social media so we can keep in touch with everything that you're doing in your career?
yeah, Instagram's probably the main one. That's the main social media I use.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just my name, Finn_Ballard McBride, and
Okay,
that's me on
brilliant.
Instagram. Yeah,
Well, I'll make sure that I've got the link for that, Finn. It's going to be in the description of the YouTube video below. So go and make sure that you give Finn a follow if you're not already, and tell him how much he meant to you last season with everything he done, and obviously wish him all the best as well. Finn, thanks again for your time, mate. Look after yourself.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, David.